knocked me over. I was like, wow. That took the tuition
She'll be
from
back.
almost 50,000.
I assume she went to get
Cost
something
from
or
almost
whatever.
50,000 down. It was unbelievable.
I won that
Yeah.
2 years. Oh, that in 2 years. Looking at very expensive schools right now. It's like
Where's she looking?
all these.
Ever.
What's it? U?
Oh.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Tops.
About 80.
Tops.
Cost is expensive.
Wow.
I think I would move to
Grades
Germany.
and
I think I'd move to
get
Germany and
recover
finish
from your
school.
injury that you can get a scholarship.
I know someone whose daughter did an exchange program to Germany, like sophomore year, and then she stayed. And so she lived with a host family. Like they let her live with, not be a host anymore, and she got in like citizens tuition in
Nice.
Germany. It's a great idea.
Well, go down, move down to North Carolina. It's dirt cheap there too, but you have to have
$200
residency.
a year.
Yep, the differential we think for Texas is unbelievable.
Oh.
I mean, it's just unbelievable.
UVM the same way, by the way? UVM's a great school, but. Pardon me? Yes. Okay. Call to order.
Are you on the clock?
We gotta say pledge allegiance first.
What time?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Call to order. Any public comment initially? Not yet. All right, so the first thing on the agenda then is the election of the fiscal year 20 Finance Committee Chair and Vice Chair. And with that, anyone want to discuss? Liz, you're independent. You don't have a vote in on any of this, unfortunately, or fortunately, but any conversation at all?
Are you looking for motions?
I am looking for a motion, but I think first a discussion at all. So can I have a motion then?
I'll move to have Sasha Weinreit, sitting right over there, be our next chair.
Do I have a second on that?
A second.
So we have Ed seconding it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So who do we have do we have a nominee for the vice chair position?
I would like to nominate Ed McMillan as vice chair.
I'll second that.
Now you have to give a speech. No.
No,
Is this now?
I think you're official.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
I
Now
would
Mr.
on both of you, but I can't. I would, but I can't.
With that, the gavel turns to,
Tim.
no,
Okay.
No.
I seconded to Ed.
Ed seconded. Sasha.
Oh, okay.
Why is she here?
Thank you.
And with that, I turn the gavel over to Sasha.
Okay, so the next piece of the agenda is discussion and vote on the transfer of departmental and other appropriations. So, do you want to come up and?
No, everybody got a copy of it, right? I emailed it originally to Tim, and he hopefully distributed it to everybody. So, this is basically, at year end, Mass General Law allows me to, with the approval of the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee, to move budget line items around to cover deficits within the fiscal year budget for the general fund operating. And this is basically what we call, and for lack of a better term, the year-end shuffle. It's a term that we've kind of all adopted somehow. It came upon us. So this is basically to cover some salary deficits that we had, because, as you know, we build the budget in September, October, and move it through to all the different committees before we actually hire some people. So when you end up hiring people and they get hired at a higher salaries, we had some salary deficits. We did have deficit in snow and ice this year, of course, even though it was a mild year. With the small storms, it's a lot more costly for small storms than it is large storms. You wouldn't think so, but with the small storms, you got to keep going out and cleaning them up, and they ice over, and you got to go back out and clean up. So it's a lot more intense. That was a little over 300,000 for the snow and ice deficit. Unfortunately, we were able to move a lot from surpluses from other department line items, and I had to cover some costs, which were additional costs for the kindergarten program project, which we had moved and paid out of Public Works, to get the building completed and up and running and everything like that. And there was the ability to do that because I knew that we would end up having some surplus budgets to cover that. And I used up $831,000 out of the group insurance to help balance the rest of this out between all the other deficits that we had as far as between contract services with the school department, which were all specifically driven around SPED. As you do know, we did transfer $250,000 from the SPED reserve, as well as additional deficits that we had been talking about all along. And this was driven by the new programs that were established at the Early Childhood Center that we had believed in the first year, had hoped when the first year that it was going to be self-supporting. We anticipate that the school is going to continue with it this moving into 2020, and that it will start supporting itself. It's just, it's a new program. We didn't, had to add teachers and didn't really know what the true total costs were going to be. So hopefully next year we won't have to have that type of a deficit. As well as we had agreed with the school department in the beginning of the year, when Andrew was here, I had been involved in quite a few meetings, that we would support one bus. We were actually going to support two, but they only needed one bus, so that was $50,000 that we told them we would give them. And then the FF&E for the Early Childhood Center, which was $100,000. Those were all known items that we knew we were going to have to transfer over to them. So all said and done, this would be this is a balance. We'll balance out all of the line items for deficits, and then I still have a substantial turn back that's going to be at the end of it, that will go back to free cash, close to almost another $1 million out of expenditures that will go back.
I'm sorry, close to what?
$1 million. Yep. So it's another strong year, and revenues were strong, and it's.
When you say that special ed program from the Annie Bradstreet is going to be self-supporting, in what way is that self-supporting? Is that through the Medicare reimbursement?
I believe so, and
Oh, okay.
and other potential fees for the kindergarten and things like that. Yep, and programs. Yep.
What about, just curious, the town hall construction settlement?
Yes.
Yeah.
What?
That was I can talk briefly, it was a lawsuit that the contractor or the subcontractor had filed on the town for some work that they performed that they believed was in the scope of the contract. We believed it was outside of the scope of the contract, and we were arguing and disputing whether we should pay it or not. We went to arbitration,
Okay.
and
That's the settlement amount?
that was the settlement amount, and it could have been, Suzanne Egan did a great job negotiating that through the, arbitration and everything, because it was upwards of over $350,000.
Okay.
And we brought it down substantially. Yep. So
What
she
about the-
earned her pay on that one, clearly.
What about the outside professional services, the $48,000 treasurer, collector, assistant treasurer? Is that
Those-
just the
that-
new hire?
That is, part of that is for bond proceeds, for the bond
I see.
issuance costs and things. Because a little bit different now, and we cut it a little close, which was why we had to pay for it throughout her budget, was I have to pay attention when the financial advisor gives me the bond issuance costs and then what the net borrowing will be, because now we can use the bond proceeds, the excess bond proceeds, to apply against, to reduce the borrowing. And we actually applied too much, so these issuance costs this was the balance of the issuance costs that I had to end up paying.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'll pay more attention to that next year, when we do the bond in May or June. Because you get bond premium from the banks that bid on it, and that bond premium usually pays the full 100% on the bond issuance costs.
Refresh my memory on the savings from the group insurance. I know that was from when we went over to the GIC. But
Right.
when does that run out of money?
Well, it's not that it's not that it runs out of money. It's the way we budget conservatively, because we don't want to use up the savings from
Right.
that 100% in the first few years. So we had anticipated we'd be able to use that savings for at least 10 years.
Okay.
So we still have quite a few years to go with that savings if we continue to budget the way we have been.
Will it just shrink every year?
Yeah, little by little. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So is that basically your line item where you block the
It's the
balance
health insurance line item that we
Yeah,
budget.
but you balance then the increases and the decreases, right?
Correct.
Because everything else
Yes.
seems like it's just
Yep,
as the account ends up, and here you have a little bit of a
Correct.
flexibility.
right. It gives us that flexibility.
How
Yep.
much was it last year?
That we used for it was
Yeah.
around the same amount. It wouldn't have been that substantial had I not needed to pay for over $400,000 for the early childhood center construction. So you look at that, if we hadn't pushed those costs and had to push those costs through the operating budget, through Public Works construction, then that would have only been $400,000 I would have used
Mm.
from the health insurance appropriation. Yep. Any other questions?
Does anyone have any questions?
No.
I think,
You just need to vote that you approve and authorize you as the chairman to sign the budget reallocation.
great, so, just.
I have a motion. Motion that we approve the transfer of, we approve the budget reallocation as shown on document dated July 15th.
Mhm.
And,
Second.
oh, you can't second.
I can't?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? No one opposed? It's unanimous.
Why can't
I'm
you,
just
are you
here
not,
for quorum.
are you,
I'm rotating off the committee.
You just signed
oh, you're officially not?
it. Yes.
Am I officially not a member
Don't
now?
think you're officially.
Because he said, no, he said I'm officially a member through August. Unless has he appointed someone yet?
Not until they sign in,
Okay,
which is August 19th.
all right. Well, I'm here. I'm a warm body. We get a quorum.
Just, there's some gray areas here.
No, we have a quorum.
Yeah, we have.
We do,
Without-
yes. Okay. Great. All right, so I am going to move public comment a little bit. Let's approve the minutes, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah.
Bye, Lynn.
Bye, Lynn, thank you.
Thank you.
Seems so long ago, does it not?
Does.
You read the minutes, you're like, oh, wow. That was the last time. My goodness.
Do the dark glasses help?
Yes, they do, because they're prescription, and I don't have my regular glasses. So, could I read
No,
this?
She just wants to look cool.
Could I read this without these glasses on? Actually, no, so we tend to look pretty sharp here. Yeah, you like
I
that?
look like Elizabeth Moss in Mad Men. when
I
she's
could
up-
You want mine?
I could have worn my hat. No, these work very well. They're bifocals.
Yeah.
And I, actually, when I use them, all of you look quite much sharper than when I take my glasses off, and you're all just probably better looking. You're a little blurry. I don't
Madam
know.
Chair, I move to approve the minutes from our,
I haven't,
oh, you have something?
yep. So, if you look at articles under 1, 2, and 3, amend zoning bylaws, we didn't agree favorable action on the zoning articles. We only agreed favorable action we agreed that they were beneficial and we liked them, but we did not take favorable action formally on the zoning articles.
She's correct. We make a favorable recommendation. Oh, I see what you're saying.
So we just have to reword that. So,
Well, that was on the sewer line, we said yes.
so I don't recall which article was the article that we was a formal favorable
I don't
action.
either.
I don't have it with me.
The sewer line extension, we did,
That's the borrowing, though.
which was number 4. It was 5 and 6 that we declined to.
But it's,
Yeah.
Sasha talking about articles 1, 2, and 3.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry, top of page 2. if you go to the Articles 1, 2, and 3 amend zoning bylaws and down to the bottom, the board agreed favorable action on Articles 1, 2, and 3 zoning changes and may result in favorable financial benefits for the town.
I see.
We agreed that we would say that we think it's, you know, a good thing for the town, but I just think we should be specific about
We didn't
saying
vote for it.
favorable action, because we didn't vote on it.
Lord.
How about, hold on. May result.
Can I make a suggestion? Just a.
Wait, what it says is the board agreed favorable actions on 1, 2, and 3 and zoning changes. Just get rid of the word "and," may result in favorable beneficial. We did this, because that doesn't say that we
Voted.
recommended favorable action. We said we agreed.
concurred,
Yes, we
yeah.
agreed favorable action on Articles 1, 2, and 3 zoning changes
Yeah.
may result in favorable financial benefits to the town. That's actually accurate.
So
It's just the "and" in there that makes it seem that we,
Yeah, I just,
right?
yeah, so what if we were, the board agreed that favorable action Articles 1, 2, and 3 may result in favorable financial benefits
Yes,
to the town?
just
Did they did not vote on,
Just
on the articles.
delete the word "and."
We didn't vote.
Right, so I think we need to say that.
It just says
Did you say-
You know
agreed.
what, Sasha, there's
Although the
nothing,
board did
nothing in there
not
about
vote,
a
they
motion or
agreed.
second
But
motion.
here's, but the thing is, it doesn't say, everything else says, I don't even think you need to add that, Sasha, because everything
Okay.
else says, we made a motion, second the motion, all are in
Sure.
favor. And
Okay.
that, so there's none of that there.
Right.
No problem, so you want to take away the word "and"?
And that's it.
Okay, that's fine.
Does that make sense to you, Angela?
Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
Any
Okay,
other-
now
Thank you.
make your motion, Tim.
I'll make a motion, I'll make a motion to approve the June 18th, 2019 Finance Committee meeting minutes with the amendment of removing the word "and" on the second page of the first section, as stated, we talked
I
about.
need them.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. See, that's what we were laughing about when you were reading, because they're prescription, and I really
Oh.
do need them to read.
I just looked up and I was like, wow.
Wow, she's so cool. They're Ray-Bans, you know, that's what does it. It's the
That's very
mystique.
Great, so we have that done. So I just wanted to take a few minutes and then we can all head home to talk about some of the areas of focus for FY20. So some of the things that I'm interested in focusing on this year, and I'd like to hear from the committee on items that you guys might be interested in focusing on, or initiatives or things that you think are important, and kind of start talking about that now, so that when budget season hits, anything that's procedural or kind of we can get taken care of now, and we can start preparing for that ramp up. Does anyone have anything that they're, I mean,
I'm going to echo something, and I give 100% credit to Ed McMillan on this topic, is taking some role, maybe not as strong words as you have, Ed, but taking some role though to the Stevens estate, and helping to find the best solution.
absolutely.
So I think if you had to say it was a special project, that's one. And the other might be, in my mind, is you got a new town manager coming on board, and finding a way to introduce her to the culture, the processes, the way we work, the nuances. At the same time, you get a feel for the town manager and their business style.
Yeah.
So.
It's great. So Stevens Estate was on the top of my list, one of the main pieces. I think the vote went the way it did, so we have to move forward and figure out how, what I think the Board of Selectmen's intentions are, if they intend to form some kind of committee to address the Stevens Estate, and then from there we can decide as a committee how we want to proceed.
I think they do, according to the last meeting. I don't know if you watched the last
Yeah.
meeting. Yeah, that is their intention.
So, how we can support them in that, what role can the finance committee play, and who will be a part of that if it has, if any finance committee members or other boards would
Yep.
contribute. So I think that's great. One of the housekeeping items I'd really like to tackle this year, and we started last year, but to kind of figure this out and get it taken care of, is the Finance Committee policies and procedures. So that is very much on the top of the list. I think that there are some redundancies that either don't need to be in our policies and procedures because they're already outlined in the town charter, or some other things we should identify. We should absolutely address the question about when we do or do not make a recommendation on an article at town meeting. I think we need to put that on paper and as a committee come to an agreement.
Consensus. When is it a financial
When
impact?
what is that threshold? And that way it's not dependent on what the article pertains to. It's just this is the threshold and
Yeah.
we're gonna address it.
Agree.
So
That's good.
I think
So
we
we're not
should.
debating it every freaking article.
It
Seriously.
absolutely. It just needs to be,
Yeah.
and so then when, if we're asked if we're going to make a recommendation or what do we think, we know that, this is our threshold and we formally make recommendations,
Yeah.
take action rather.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we can address it other ways as we see fit.
Yeah.
Is there something we should be doing? I know we have the OPEB committee, but that's a big problem everywhere for companies as well as towns. I just wonder, even if it's just raising visibility on, that everybody in town that votes should know that that's one of the top three things. I mean, everyone loves to talk about the school budget and things like that, but the retirement costs and the long-term liability is something that I think is our committee, even if it's only educational. I'm not sure what we can do about it because it's,
So there were some guidelines that were presented to the Board of Selectmen relative to addressing the OPEB liability for the town with making certain, every year, a budgeted target relative to improving the reserves that would go and could be applied against the OPEB and actually socking that money away. And it's a variety of different things. There's also other things that have to be worked out. For example, encouraging more and more employees to go on their spouse's health care plan.
right.
Doing those kinds of things. And it's listed out in the document. And what we need to do is print that document out for you and everyone so that you can see what's already happened and been presented. And then I think if anything, it's really measuring and holding the towns to those guides. I don't really know it's guidance, but I like to see it more like policy.
Mm.
We could request an update from the chair of OPEB to actually review that document, because I watched the meeting, and it was extensive. I mean, it wasn't casual. It was actually, I thought it was a really decent presentation. But the fact that you're asking the questions is like, yeah, that the Finance Committee should be part of the process, or at least have a full understanding of what conclusions they came to and what
Yeah.
actions they took.
Do we get our voice back to, I know it sounds like we do it regionally, and then whatever, the Cape Ann region, whatever we talked about, where we're a part of, it rolls up to the state. But there's a lot of stuff that private companies are doing right now. For instance, centers of excellence, where if you have a certain diagnosis, Walmart, for instance, it's cheaper to pay to send somebody to the Mayo Clinic for a cancer diagnosis and make sure they're getting the right treatment than to let them just kind of use the community-based healthcare things. Now, we obviously live in Boston. We've got those centers in Boston where we have an abundance, but there's a lot of innovative stuff that's going on right now. Maybe not the stuff that everybody thinks of. Some of the wellness stuff probably doesn't have a great ROI, but there's clearly a change in philosophy now. I mean, do we to the people that we're sort of beholden to that buy the insurance, do we have a way to get to them with our recommendations? Or
So the focus has been including the participants. This has to do with people who are retired and making sure that they are both on Medicare as well as taking advantage of the group health insurance plan that the rest of the town participates in. So there is a control on that device. The issue is relative to OPEB is us old people are living longer, right, Stan? And
hope so.
I do too. But that means they're living longer than what was anticipated when that benefit first came out.
right.
And as a result of that, it's just not the people who are retired, it's all those that are currently just being employed that are being included in that OPEB liability of $100 million plus. And so it's sort of a complex way of looking at it in the future, but it's real. Those are real dollars unless something happens. And at least we're starting to build it up. Right now, we have a pay-as-you-go basis. And so what we're doing is we're gonna build up that reserve so that we're not gonna have, we can still do pay-as-you-go, but we'll have a cushion in there in case, as those costs go up, we'll be able to cover those kinds of costs. And there's built-in kickers there relative to. So what I'll do is I'll get a copy of that document and send it out electronically.
Yeah, it'd be great,
Because-
great to see.
Jen Goldman and Chuck started on the OPEB. When Jen went off, I went on it. And then I attended, I think, 3 or 4 meetings before. I couldn't attend the town meeting, but before it was finalized. But was involved in the final writing. And Andrew Mailer, by the way, did the bulk, the
Okay.
major haul of the document itself. So.
I think that's great, and we may, we can request also that Chris Nobley
Yeah.
come in and
Yeah.
present to us unless you want to do that presentation, Tim, or what would you?
I think Chris would be good as well.
All right,
Because he's the voice of the Board of Selectmen as well as, I can add my 2 cents worth. relative
okay.
to-
Is there anyone else you think from that committee we should ask, or just leave it up to Chris?
Leave it up to Chris.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, I'll make that request, and potentially we can kind of get him in the next 1 or
Yeah.
2 meetings.
There's both a presentation that was made to the Board of Selectmen as well as the document itself. So I'll get you guys copies of that.
Okay. All right. So one other thing that I think would be interesting is also to consider what kind of public outreach or kind of presentations we want to do. So one of the things that I found when I was a new member of the committee was wrapping my head around how a municipal budget works in a really concise way. And it's actually laid out really well in the budget book, but we don't get that until
Right.
the end, right?
Right.
So I think we absolutely, have to give that to our new members and show them how, where that is laid out. But is this something that anyone would be interested in kind of holding, a presentation, and not a presentation, but just kind of like a meet and greet of the finance committee to the public, where people can come and just ask questions, or we can do a short kind of this, and have Lynn come, or the new town, whoever, and get people engaged a little bit and see if they have questions. I mean,
I'll tell you right now, no one will come to that meeting. As much as I would, I know it's so harsh, and I might be wrong, but it would be, here's an alternative. We might actually approach Cam and say, can we do a short clip? And so it's available as a tutorial. That's an alternative.
my hope was that Cam would, it'd be a meeting, so Cam would record it.
Yeah,
And we could
I
post
mean,
that somewhere.
and I get that, like, I agree with you. The outreach is a great idea. You really want to get people involved. And so you might put it out there to see if you really think people would be interested in attending something like this. It'd be hard.
So to bring up new members on the committee, you just gave me pause here. I'm sure that the new town manager's up to speed relative to budget processes and things like that.
Mhm.
But it might be nice just to rehash the approved fiscal year 20 budget for everybody, including the town manager, and get the highlights of that particular thing and just carve it out and saying, okay, 50% of it is the schools, and here's how we got to the school budget. The rest of it's this. Here's the other issues in the back of the book, the debt, and I don't know. Maybe that's one way of getting meet and greet with the town manager as well as the 2 new finance committee members.
Yeah. Well, let's think about it. Let it marinate, and we'll get back there. Well, I
know,
think it would be.
Bucket of water.
Yeah, I would like to, if anyone has questions, be accessible, and us to be kind of a committee that people can ask questions at and come and feel like they can bring up topics we may not be discussing that day.
Yep.
I think that would be helpful. So any way you guys can think of that we can do that would be, I think, good.
Mhm.
Another topic, obviously, is school capital funding. So I don't know how that conversation will go this year, and specifically, our desire as a committee to get a longer term forecast. So I think that's on my radar. Is that
It's worthy.
I think that's on the list. Is that on the list for everyone else in terms of a topic we want to continue to
Yep.
focus on?
Yes.
So, and I think part of that too is being available for the school committee and anyone else if they have questions, or if there's ways so that we can support them. That would be it. And then there's one more topic that I am interested in exploring. So has anyone been following the state legislature's conversation on non-disclosure agreements?
Oh, sure, yes.
So I think that, so if you haven't or you have, so there are some legislature, people in the legislature at the state level that are talking about passing a bill that would, not allow the use of non-disclosure agreements in cases of sexual assault or harassment. Basically so that public funds aren't being used for these agreements. And they called for a state audit of municipalities in the state on Monday. And I read the paper this morning that the state auditor denied that request. So I think as a finance committee, it's worth talking about. And it's worth having a conversation about whether or not we want to understand if the town of North Andover is using non-disclosure agreements. And if so, how many and at what cost? Because for me, it's a taxpayer issue. So, North Andover may or may not be doing that. But if so, where are those funds in the budget or in the transfer of funds at the end of the year? And I think, we have kind of a responsibility to
That's
to
probably a
know
meeting
that.
with town council, I would imagine.
I mean,
Yeah.
what is your perspective on that in general?
I think it's a meeting with Tom, if you want to pursue it, it's a meeting with Suzanne and just talk about the process and answer all your questions. I wouldn't be surprised if it's insurance proceeds under some of the circumstances, so I don't know. I don't know, that's the first I've ever heard.
I think it's interesting, but I think the concern here is we're a little bit on uncharted territory. As long as, let's say, the non-disclosure is basically a legal document that cannot be breached in current circumstances, we cannot just go out and say, okay, you have to now disclose everything and show us what's in there.
I don't think
Oh,
we're
no.
asking for disclosure at all.
No,
No,
just
she's
It's
asking-
just how many and
just
what is
an
the dollar
accounting.
amount.
Or do we spend $200,000 a year, or do we spend zero? That's
And-
really it.
And I
Yeah.
think maybe legal can tell us, if that is already a step too far, but I think it's interesting, but I don't want to get into hot water that suddenly, something bubbles up and then it's like, we had a non-disclosure agreement and now it's here in the public domain,
Yeah.
Yeah, and my intention is not to have anyone that was involved in that process, especially a victim, their name or anything. No one's asking for information.
You don't
We're
even want a
asking
list.
What, no, I want how
Right.
many
Yeah.
and how much money.
Yeah, that's it.
That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're talking about the public, this is a very hot button issue right now.
It is.
Yeah.
So when constituents of North Andover come and say, hey, does North Andover do this? It would be a good thing for the finance committee
To
to
know.
know whether they do and at what degree and
Yep.
at how much money is
Right.
involved.
I mean,
that-
I
Yeah.
just signed my name to a document that said we approve the transfer of these funds, and they're
Are any of those funds being used for something like
We
that?
don't- we don't
It's a
know.
valid, yeah. I mean,
and I'm not asking for specifics, but I think it's a to be fiscally prudent. It makes sense to know what that looks like. That would be my perspective, and something I'd like to pursue if everyone's kind of that's an issue you want to add to this list.
That's okay. That's
Yep.
that's an agenda item.
Yeah.
That's really, yeah.
Okay.
What would we do with that information then? Let's say they tell us, $5 million over 3 settlements.
I think we wait for that information.
I think then we start to poke the bear.
Right.
Yeah,
if it's $1,000 and there's one, that's a different,
Yeah.
that's something I think we have an obligation to taxpayers to know. If it's a $5 million number, which I don't know how that would be
you
or
could
how that would
possibly
work.
incur $5 million in legal fees.
But you get the point, some outrage, then that's a different conversation and we're not even close to
Right.
being there. But I think it would be important for us to be able to speak to that.
Or just to say, North Andover does not participate in these.
Right. And
Or let's put
I
it
don't
this
know
way,
the answer to
never
that.
have.
We have,
Historically,
or let's put this way, we have shown no indication that any of our funds are put towards this,
Right.
whether we participate
It
there or
could
not.
be,
That would be
something as simple as just writing.
I'm sure we have something. I'm sure we have
It could
something.
be something as simple as writing Suzanne a letter and just saying, could you
Yeah.
find us committee?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
And I'm not
That's
looking,
something.
I think that's,
Does this tie into liability too, though? Because I know, we had our school situation disclosed. I was thinking, will this have a material impact on our budget? I mean, I assume we have insurance, but I don't know how much insurance we have. I don't know what what a lawsuit is worth. I mean, is that a,
Well, see,
Well,
there's already a lot of policies and procedures in effect already under the umbrella of the school's
Yeah.
policies and procedures, where there, I mean, I don't know if you call them non-disclosure agreements, but there, you can't talk about anything about students. You can't talk about, and in the town, an employee's, you know, history. You can't, there's a lot of things that you can't talk about already that have nothing to do with a non-disclosure agreement. It's
right.
already policy.
Yeah.
I understand that,
Right.
but I'm thinking more about, you know, you are subject to lawsuits if you fire an employee,
Right.
if somebody gets hurt in schools.
Right.
This sort of opens up into, what is
there-
our,
Was there a
do we have a
negotiation?
$5 million policy? Do we have a 10? What is our?
Right,
what is
that's
our-
a good point,
Under
but,
what circumstances could something get so big, it could impact my tax rate? That's,
well, here's a case in point. I would like to say he who should not be named, but his name was Dr. Harry Hartunian. When he was terminated as superintendent of schools, the town decided to pay off his remaining contract instead of entering into litigation, because the cost was far less to do that. And it wasn't cheap, we're talking several $100,000 to do that, as opposed to go into a protracted litigation. That did happen, that maybe that's something
Right.
like that you're
just
talking
moved here
about.
when that happened. You're opening up a lot of synapses here. I
Yes.
do remember that.
That, so you could Google that.
Yeah.
You could Google that and do the Google and find out about Dr. Harry Hartunian and how it happened. And a lot of people were very unhappy that we paid his contract, we, in the general we as the town. But then again, when you take a look at like there was a couple things. We wanted to have him gone because you can't move forward without a new superintendent. He was no longer, should have been a superintendent. So there was that, the moving forward. And the other part was like, you know, we can't do 2 years, 3 years of litigation. The town is just like, it was a very tough time right there. That was not gonna happen. So, anyway. So those things do happen. But non-disclosure agreement, no clue. I don't know. I know the fair amount of details of that, so I don't know.
I just think it's worth exploring, just how many and how much, if any, are they even used? I don't know North Andover's policy.
Yep, good point.
So if the state auditor's not gonna do that, I think it's simply just a question for the town, and
Yep.
then we move forward. Okay, I think that was it. Any public comments?
Uh-oh.
Before,
Yeah.
I have one more thing.
Yeah, please.
You know, I was always, we spent quite some time to put our, you know, summary, our financial summary together, like in the morning letter. And, you know, should we, and I don't know how, but get some feedback?
Yeah,
What
it's a great idea.
people think about it, you know, is that
I like that, that's a great
That's
idea.
a great idea.
Is
Yeah.
it easy to understand,
Mhm.
or we also, you know, getting into the weeds, and then, so I don't know how we can gather some information. So.
I mean, do we really want to open ourselves up for scrutiny? Because you could
Yes.
post it on Facebook and see what they say.
I mean, no, I think,
I
yes.
mean, No, I
No,
don't
there's
think
nothing like
so.
sunshine.
Like,
Honestly.
North Andover moms. Hey, everyone,
Yeah.
I'm a mom. I'm on the finance committee here. The other moms are on here too. And do you have any feedback? Is this helpful for you?
Yeah, and,
I don't
then,
know.
and then it's just like, how much do you care? But, you know, about what people say. But, you know,
It's an option.
yeah, it's an option,
We can consider it.
yes.
It's a great idea.
Would that be considered a political post on
Oh!
Denver moms? It might get pulled right down.
Well, then again, then it does.
That tells you something.
That tells
too,
you something
doesn't
right
it?
there, right? Okay.
No, I think
I
that's a
can
great
say
idea.
stuff like
Do you
that
have any
on the
suggestions as to how we
committee.
might
Yeah,
get
do-
that feedback?
No.
It's a great
I
idea.
was
North
just
Andover
wondering.
dads.
Is there a polling? Is there a
Is there
polling?
a North Andover Dads?
Is there a polling mechanism? Like, is there something we could post? Chris McClure could put on the town website and say, you know, here's a
Yes.
give us your comments,
Yes,
please.
yes,
We should maybe we
yes.
could talk about that.
Yes.
To the-
Yeah. Ask Lynn.
I will.
Just like what
That's
the
a great
town-
idea.
Just like what the town moderator did with
One-
his surveys, right?
One more,
Yeah.
a little bit maybe unrelated, but you know, my biggest fear being on that committee is looking back in 10, 15 years, what we did today. You know, did we oversee things which are
Wait,
right
put
under
my
our
sunglasses
nose,
back on.
and we didn't really focus on it, and in 10, 15 years, you know, it blows up, and then, not that I'm concerned about, you know, being sued by not seeing that, you know, in 10, 15 years, who knows where I am in 10, 15 years, but You know, I'm just wondering how you guys think about it, you know?
That's a good question. You never know if you got everything covered. I think in the last several years since you and I have been together on the committee, the OPED has come up. And that, I'm glad we helped push along. The thing that I would say I'm most embarrassed about is just allowing the Stevens estate to move on and on and on and on. And then when you look at the history of the Stevens estate, it was basically an abused oversight. And it's like, wow, I mean, that
How
was
did
to
you
me.
not see that?
How did
Yeah.
you not see that? That's a good example of what you just said, but it's there now. So I'm not gonna lose any sleep, but, you know, that's a good eye. I just don't know what else is out there.
I think that's also engagement, though, right? So how engaged are we in probing into things that we may not be that may be status quo? So we kind of Stevens Estate was trucking along. We knew there were some issues, and you know Andrew had brought it up a couple times that we didn't dig in. And so, you know, potentially should we have said, "Hey, who wants to take this? Which person has an interest? Dig in a little bit, and then come back to us and say what you know." Let's put a plan together and see if there's a recommendation we can make. And maybe this year we can be, you know, try to do that a little bit in places that we wouldn't necessarily look. You know, we just identified some pretty big ticket items that are glaring. Are there other things we're concerned about, like water and sewer rates? Like that's one that's a way forward thinking where we're starting to see public policy about it and conversations, but it hasn't impacted us yet. So is that something? I don't know. I'm just
Pension cost.
I was just wondering if we could add, you know, just almost like with no agenda, just kind of a brainstorming thing for us here in the committee, not going into the weeds, you know, going through the budget and the investment. I mean, we always get then stuck in these details, and have just one session where we just, you know, free-flowing ideas. What could, you know, be really a
With a whiteboard
dangerous-
and, yeah.
just one, and just collect a couple of ideas. We might come back to the same OPEB Stephen Estate, but maybe something else gets uncovered by being less structured
Maybe
and guided by a town manager.
a retreat.
Yes,
You-
that's
you
called a
mean-
retreat.
Well,
yeah.
maybe that's a really good idea. So maybe before, you know, I know summer and life is really busy, but we schedule kind of a short retreat, one night instead of a meeting, and we do that, and we can have it offsite or do something
Yeah.
where there's.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good idea.
And if we don't want it filmed, it's approval of town manager, correct?
Yep.
I mean, it would still be open to the public, just so people know.
Open to the
Yes.
open to the public.
We
Yeah.
still have minutes. You
Yep.
know.
Yeah, no, the whole
Yeah.
thing, you are required to do
Yeah,
that.
we'll have minutes. We'll comply with open meeting law,
But I mean,
it's a
the school
retreat.
committee and the Board of Selectmen have had retreats like that for varying reasons over the years, so, and they're very useful.
Yeah. All right. So I think that's
Yeah.
a great idea. So we'll work on that.
Have we not?
All
right.
I'm leaving, now you're gonna all have fun.
You can come. The public is invited.
Remember the public.
The public is invited.
$850.
Bring
I think
the
we never
wine.
spend the $850.
No, we don't.
Never.
No.
It's part of the free cash.
Loads of free cash.
All right. Any other conversation points about the next year? Anything?
Nope.
This is really good.
Good.
Stan.
Thanks, Stan Lippert, 43 Stone Creek Road. So I want to start out by by saying first, Liz, I'm going to miss you. I'm sorry you're going
Me
off
too.
committee. I really enjoyed coming to meetings and hearing your inputs, and you know, I think you were a wonderful member of this committee, and I'm going to miss you. So I'm sorry you're
Thank you
going, but
very
I'm
much.
I'm
I
sure
miss all
you'll
of you as well.
appreciate your time away, and you'll watch on TV. Ha, ha.
Yes, of course.
Yeah,
I'll
yeah,
tune
of
in.
course. And
Your
Tim,
biggest fan.
and Tim, thanks for your service as chair. You did a bunch of, got everybody through a bunch of stuff. You know, some things happened. You know, we had some opportunities and challenges. So
Yeah, it was good.
that
Yeah.
worked good. That worked well. So thanks. So to your point, Thomas, a good segue. So I have some ideas. And I wanted to come and I'm sure at some point they'll be on your agenda, but I just wanted to try to tell you what I have been thinking about, which is $5 million and $3 million. So we've been told that we're going to get this windfall of money when they start building the Amazon deal, right? There's going to be a big bag of money, one-time money that's going to show up. And then there's going to be this new revenue that we're going to be getting. So what the heck are we going to do with all this money? What should we be thinking about? I mean, is that the OPEB solution? Is that $3 million a year part of the OPEBs? I don't know. You know, these are things that I think you're the perfect group to start thinking about that sort of stuff before we get to that point. And it's, you know, it's early enough so that the Board of Selectmen isn't ready to start thinking about this yet. But, you know, it might be a good thing to just kick around. And, you know, to your point, you know, if we're talking about schools' capital investment, well, maybe we invest some of that $5 million in, you know, self-funding the middle school or something, whatever it is. I mean, and again, you know, you have an excellent opportunity to present really fiscal alternatives, financial alternatives, you know, based on all that sort of stuff. So it's you know, those are topics, you know, that, you know, if you thought about them now and helped move that in the right direction, you wouldn't be looking back 10 years from now and going like, geez, we should have thought of how to use that money better. You know, so, you know, there's that. And there's also, you know, we've been doing so well financially, fiscally, our town, that there's now, you know, sort of a growing, not surplus, but we have leverage. You know, the free cash has gotten to the point where, you know, we have stuff we can do now and places we can go. So, again, wonderful place for you all to engage and think about ideas about, you know, we have, you know, and I'm going to sound real parochial here, but get over it, about schools, right? So we don't have just one school. We actually have 4 schools on the list, right? Mm-hmm. We have the middle school and 3 elementary schools that we're going to want to do something about. Mm-hmm. And if we use the mailer model, they'll all be self-funded. You know, we're not going to bond any of that. We may have to do it for the middle school if we want to self-finance, but generally speaking, we're going to pay for it some other way. So now's the time to start thinking about that. You know, and you might be the perfect group to start that thought process, to start thinking about how that goes. And, you know, and again, back to the $3 million a year, if that's a real number, and we'll find out more about that later. But even if it's somewhat less, you know, back to the point, is that something we want to commit to the OPEB problem because we want to solve that problem? So we just say, rather than go spend this on something else, we're going to really try to get a handle on that forever. You know, we're going to just dedicate some portion of that money to that problem forever. You know, talk about fiscally disciplined. That should keep our AAA bond rating for much longer. So, you know, I think there's some wonderful opportunities now to do some brainstorming and think about things now so that, you know, 10 years from now, we're looking back and going like, you know, that actually turned out pretty well. That all worked, you know. I'm glad we did that. So, and I was surprised to hear Lynn say tonight that there was still money left from the self-insurance trust fund. I thought we had by now spent all that money, but that's not a bad thing.
No.
It's not a bad thing.
It's remarkable for the resistance that we got to not go into the GIC before Andrew Miller showed up.
So, you know, and that's, again, you know, you have a wonderful opportunity with a new town manager coming on board to start with them and sit down and have those discussions like, hey, we're here to help. You know, we are not the IRS. We are here to help. You know, what can we do to help? A point I would make about trying to understand where people are coming from and understand what their hot buttons are is, I know you all have done it from time to time, but I would encourage you to go to school committee meetings from time to time and select board meetings from time to time, just to hear what they have to say, you know, to see what's on their radar and on their agenda and get some feedback from, you know, get that firsthand feedback. I mean, you know, I made an entire career about going to meetings and everybody laughs at me, but I tell you, you get to know what's going on and you find out, you know, who's doing what and how they're doing it. So it can be very valuable information, particularly if you're trying to help, you know, because you see what is really their priority. And so that, and you know how to help them then because you see it. And so that would just be one suggestion I might have is, you know, it doesn't have to be all the meetings, but from time to time, you could look at their agendas and see, you know, when they're discussing things about money or whatever it is, to go and show up and just see what they have to say. And then, you know, pitch in. And you have a great opportunity now, you know, now that, you know, you have a new chair, to go and meet with the select board chair and the new town manager, and, you know, it's going to be fun. So you can have some fun doing that. But You know, I think there's so many wonderful opportunities now that you all have to do some really good things and some good thinking. And so 10 or 15 years from now, you're going like, we did really good. That was good. We came up with some good ideas that really helped make it work, so.
So Stan,
Tim,
we look back 10, 15 years, and I
Yeah.
say this is all honesty and all humbleness to you, is that you helped break down those barriers
man,
that
man.
happened. And I applaud you for that, because I know how active you were and how, you know, oh, he's here amongst us, you know, attitude you got sometimes, and it didn't deter you, not at all. I
Well,
appreciate that.
I have to say that when I first started doing this in 2008, I was met with not indifference but animosity.
Animosity.
From the finance committee.
Yes,
It was
from the
awful.
I was
awful.
a sidekick.
And
I was the sidekick.
and I didn't, to be perfectly honest, my 60-second story, I didn't understand it. So finally, after I'd sort of gotten over the hump, after a few meetings, and I could finally get to the point where I could actually talk to at least one finance committee meeting, as we're walking out of the meeting, I said, you know, I just don't get it. I don't get why there's this, I'm just a new guy. I just showed up. Why is there all this animosity? They said, well, we've just been treated so badly over the years that I guess it's just a habit we formed. I said, what do you mean by that? They said, well, we used to ask for information from the school department. This is pre-Hartunian. And you know, we'd ask for financial information, and they'd just say, no,
No.
we're not giving it to you.
Exactly.
I said, what? They can't do that. That's public. That's what they'd do. They wouldn't give us the information. I said, well, I can understand how that would create a little animosity. And so, you know, over time, we were able to turn that around a little bit, and times change and people
And you were
change.
instrumental in that. Yeah.
So, you know, and it's been good because now I think more than any other time that I've been involved, you know, there's a better working relationship between the three boards, committees in this town than there ever has been. You know, the select board, the school committee, and this committee. So I think that's great, and I think that's going to be a big help going forward. I think we have all these wonderful opportunities ahead of us, and I really see you all playing a big part in that. So, you know, good advisors. Give everybody good advice. So, thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Dan.
All right. Any other comments?
I have one thing.
Yeah.
Just out abundance of cautious here. So I'm a disclosure, and I don't think I don't think I have to, but I still do it.
Yeah.
I got actually hired as the varsity boys soccer coach for Greater Lawrence Technical School, and I get paid. And I know that North Andover is partially funding Greater Lawrence Technical School through a certain percentage. So I'm indirectly benefiting from a very, very small amount out of our $100 million budget.
Thank you for being abundantly cautious in your disclosure.
Well, here's, actually, if you
Yeah, that's
really
pretty
want
awesome.
to do the abundantly cautious, what you need to do, because I had to do this also for a different reason.
Put it in writing.
Put it in writing
All right.
and submit it to the interim, submit it to Lynn, because she's the person who submitted to Nolan Savage, the interim town manager. But that's what you do, is you
Okay.
say, because then it's on file. And that's really all you have to do, because it's up to them to decide whether this is an issue or not.
Yep.
But that's what you do. So put it in writing and submit it, and you were good. You were good.
Awesome.
And they're done that.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
No, let's stay.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I